It's a Wednesday evening. My name is Caroline. My pronouns are she and her. I am an early learning principal with Oakland Unified School District, and I'm so happy to have you all here with us. We're very excited to introduce you all to an Oakland grown toolkit for early learning professionals called ROC. It stands for Resilient Oakland Communities and Kids, and it includes lessons in healing-centered and trauma-responsive early education. We're going to dig into ROC later as I have a few announcements first. So just a reminder that all of tonight's participants are invited to attend an in-person wellness and appreciation event that we're hosting this weekend. We will be at Bananas in Oakland this Saturday, May 4th from 10 until noon, rain or shine, and it actually might rain on Saturday. We'll have free chair massages, art projects, yoga, and drumming. We'll also have an opportunity for you to get professional headshot photo taken. We're giving away a bag of children's books that are related to the topic that we're discussing today. And also raffling off Lakeshore Learning gift cards. Of course, we'll be offering breakfast. And best of all, if you stay for 1 hour, you receive an hour of professional development credit. We really hope to see you there. And if you haven't registered already for this event, please do so by clicking on a link that's popping into your chat right now. Also, we wanted to invite you to our May 13th Let's Talk Early Learning. So the Let's Talk sessions are held in the evenings on Zoom, and they're informal ways for you to get to know other early learning professionals and to talk about subjects that are probably at the top of your mind in our field. We have 4 wonderful facilitators from OUSD, Yvonne Garcia, Annette Wright, Nini Humphrey, who will also host breakout rooms in English and Spanish. Our next Let's Talk session is going to be on Monday, May 13th at 6 p.m. And it will the focus will be on career development and advancement opportunities for early learning professionals. We will put the link for registration in your chat and send it out in a follow-up email later tonight. So before we begin, I just wanted to share a little bit of background information on ROC. So since 2017, Oakland Starting Smart and Strong has been working with early childhood educators to increase resilience and healing and to promote the healthy social emotional development of young children. We know that educators are more able to offer a healing early learning environment when they themselves are attuned to their own well-being. And that's why over the years, we've crafted and honed the ROC learning framework that includes in-person and virtual group workshops, professional learning communities, coaching, yoga, and self-care resources. The ROC tools were developed in partnership with early childhood educators and administrators, coaches, mental health consultants, content experts, yoga and mindfulness teachers, Oakland Unified School District, City of Oakland Head Start, and OSSS staff. All these individuals and agencies have provided critical expertise, knowledge, and cultural assets. It has been my privilege to be part of this effort, and you'll be hearing more from these partners tonight. So we hope the toolkit that we're sharing serves as inspiration and sparks new ideas, not just for those working and living in Oakland, but everywhere. So now for some more background and some meeting housekeeping items, we're going to turn to Winona Elms from the City of Oakland Head Start, who is co-moderating this event with me today. Please take it away, Winona.
Thank you, Carolyn. And welcome everyone. It's great to have everyone here tonight. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday evening. My name is Winona Elms. My pronouns are she, her, and I work for the City of Oakland Head Start as the Disability and Mental Health Coordinator. We're going to start tonight off. First, we're going to hear from 5 speakers, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms to share and expand on what we learned. Probably around 7:30, we'll go into the breakout rooms. But before we begin, as Caroline mentioned, we want to do some housekeeping. We're going to have a specific time for questions for the speakers after they've concluded. If you have questions during the Q&A, please raise your hand by clicking on the reactions button and clicking raise hand option below the emojis. You can also ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions. Some might need follow-up, but we'll really do our best to be responsive as we can. The meeting is being recorded and will be shared widely, so keep that in mind as you participate. And as we go through our presentations, you don't need to have your video on. You may, but you don't need to have it on. We do invite you, if you feel comfortable, to turn it out in the breakout rooms that as they're happening. And the breakout rooms are not being recorded. We know that many of you today will be receiving professional development credits. And those certificates are going to be emailed to you after the event. We'll be sending out the resources shared in an email, so keep an eye out for that in your inbox. We also want to begin our session tonight by recognizing historical injustices. Please take a moment to locate the native land you are on right now by going to the link that we will put in the chat. It should be in the chat now. After you do that, or if you already know, please take a moment and add the lands you are on right now to the chat. We would also like to recognize and acknowledge the labor upon which our country was built, especially as today is May Day, Labor Day. We remember that our country was built on the labor of enslaved people, primarily of African descent. We want to recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We also acknowledge all immigrants and indigenous labor who contributed to the building of this country and continue to serve within our labor force. We acknowledge the labor inequities and the shared responsibilities for combating oppressive systems in our daily work. Thank you very much for participating in that land and labor acknowledgement. I am now incredibly pleased to introduce our first speaker tonight, Julie Kurtz. Many of you may know Julie. She is the founder and executive director of the Center for Optimal Brain Integration. She is an author, speaker, and an expert consulting and training internationally on trauma responsive and resilient building strategy. She has over 30 years experience working with youth, adults, and families who have experienced trauma and toxic stress. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Winona. It's good to see everybody tonight. If we could go to the next slide, I'm going to dive right into it because this work is so life-changing that we've been doing in this community, and understanding the brain and behavior in schools is life-changing. Why? Because in schools we do earthquake drills and fire drills and active shooter drills. Why do we do that? To prepare the adults and the children for real emergencies. Why don't we do emotional emergency drills? The more we practice with children to understand their nervous system, to understand their feelings and sensations in their body, to understand the size of their feelings in their body, to figure out strategies to help their body feel calmer and safer and more regulated, the better they can get at being humane and problem solving in healthy ways. And so this is the work that we're doing together, is growing humane beings. Why is this so important? Let's go to the next slide. Trauma and stress is the pandemic that we are all paying attention to before the previous pandemic. This is so important. You can look at this slide. However, I'm going to highlight a few things for you. Almost half of our children under the age of 6 in the United States before the pandemic have experienced trauma. That data is profound, trauma or toxic stress. And that was before the pandemic. We know those numbers have increased from the pandemic. Almost 70% of us in this virtual space right now experience trauma by the age of 18. So this is something that we are ahead of the curve in addressing. We have been implementing trauma-informed, trauma-responsive, and healing-engaged practices in this community, and this is what changes lives, changes nervous systems. Let's go to the next slide. When we become trauma-responsive and we become healing-engaged and we become navigators of the nervous system and we intentionally promote social-emotional skills and helping nervous systems that have experienced trauma feel safe, that's how we give children a voice. You see, children who have experienced toxic stress or trauma lose their voice. Why? Because the way trauma is stored in the body makes it very, very difficult for us to access the words to communicate what we're feeling. So, how do we give children a voice? As adults, in this virtual space, we have learned in all of our trauma responsive trainings that to give a child a voice who's experienced toxic stress or trauma or adversities, we have to start with developing our own, strengthening our own trauma responsive voice. You see, the first voice that we usually have when we're faced with a child with dysregulated, puzzling, confusing behavior is that voice you see on the screen, "What is wrong with you?" That is the voice we tend to have first. And out of that voice, we usually punish and blame and shame and criticize and bribe to try to get them to behave. But especially for trauma impacted children, that causes the nervous system to go even more in high alert and results in more dysregulated behavior. And for children who don't have a trauma history, it doesn't teach them when we punish what to do instead. Now, when we move to the voice, "What Happened to You?" That's the book that Oprah Winfrey and one of the leaders in the trauma field, Dr. Bruce Perry, says. That's the title of their book. When we have that voice, we have a little more empathy and curiosity of where the behavior is coming from. But all these years we've been doing this work together, and today we're going to honor that we have been in the trauma gym. What do I mean by that? Building a muscle, unlike any other muscle, one that's life-changing, strengthening the inner narrative of the adult when we are faced with children's challenging behavior. What is your behavior communicating? That helps us look at individual children and alter our strategies as we look at the individual child's nervous system and wonder what the behavior is telling us they need or they feel. Let's look a little deeper into that in the next slide. I love this slide because when we are faced with children with dysregulated, confusing, or challenging behavior, we usually see the shark fin. And then we have the voice, "What's wrong with you?" And the trajectory of our behaviors is punishing and blaming. But when we become trauma responsive and healing engaged, we have the muscle and the power to look past the shark fin to the goldfish underneath. That beautiful child whose behavior is just communicating a story of, number one, I'm trying to gain someone or something, or two, I'm trying to avoid someone or something with this challenging behavior. Number three, I'm trying to express an emotion. Or if they've experienced trauma, sometimes the dysregulated behavior is communicating, "I feel unsafe right now." Has nothing to do with you, adult, has nothing to do with the environment. Something triggered me that's causing me to be fearful right now. So thank you for looking past that shark fin these past years and developing that muscle. Next slide, please. Now, just to highlight the brain a little bit, when we experience trauma, we tend to live in that red hind survival brain, fight, flight, freeze. And the reason we're becoming navigators of the nervous system is so we can strengthen the ability for a child's brain to feel safer, not having to live in fight, flight, freeze all the time. And by implementing these strategies proactively and intentionally, we are developing the green part of their brain, that prefrontal cortex where we are strengthening children's ability to think, have empathy, reason, problem solve, self-regulate. It is absolutely powerful what you're doing. In a moment, we're going to learn a little bit why, but let's go to the next slide. We talked earlier about how important it is to do these emotional emergency drills, proactively, intentionally teaching kids how to identify their emotions, the size of their emotions, how to regulate and help their body feel safe. So that is what develops that green part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that takes 25 years to develop. Practice makes permanent with kids. Punishment does not. All right, let's move on. So the takeaways of the strategies that we want to teach is just what I mentioned. Teaching children about their brain, teaching them to build self-awareness, strategies. In other words, most of the time we teach kids, or we grew up with parents who taught us how to cast the spotlight of our attention outward all day. What we're doing instead is teaching kids how to cast the spotlight of their attention on the inner universe that lives inside of them so they get better at helping their body feel safe, regulated, and making decisions that are healthier, not harmful. Let's go to the next slide. Why are you brain architects? I'm giving you and bestowing upon all of you tonight the most important job description, being a brain architect, because between the ages of 0 and 6, children are building 1 million new neural connections every second in their brain. Did you hear that? Neural connections are actually one neuron firing, connecting to another neuron, and developing into a habit. And if we can rewire the brains and bodies of children that have been impacted by trauma to feel safe again, then their cortex, the top of their thinking, reasoning brain that can learn academics and social emotional skills, will wake up and actually be open to learning and listening because they feel safe with you. I'm going to show you 2 examples. Let's watch this next slide. This is a 7-second video of a child that was adopted from the foster care program by 2 moms, and they shared and gave me permission to use this video. This is him in the middle of an emotional emergency, and my friends, this is a miracle. Let's watch.
I know I was starting to get mad. See my red cheeks?
I see your cheeks.
That means I'm getting mad.
Why are you getting mad, Emmy?
Because
Why is this a miracle? Because any child in the middle of an emotional emergency that can identify with words, especially a child who's been through trauma, that it can identify with words what they're feeling, what their body looks like when they're having that feeling, and their behavior, that stomping of the feet, is an absolute miracle. That takes a parent, an adult, a caregiver practicing with the child over and over when they're calm. And when we practice with children when they're calm, they begin to develop the skills to actually use these strategies in a real life emergency. I'm going to show you how young you can actually practice with children on this next slide. This is a video of my grandbaby, and I am with my grandbaby for the first time ever at 18 months, introducing him to 4 feelings. Now, I'm a little embarrassed. I didn't realize that I was going to be showing this, but I got my kids' permission, and I want to share it with you because I think we can teach emotions as early as 18 months. Let's watch together.
Happy. Sad. Mad. That's right. That's mad. Scared. Happy. Sad. Mad. No. Yes, that's mad. Yes. Scared. Oh no, oh no, what are we gonna do? No, I'm scared.
Oh my goodness. I love that, not just because it's my grandbaby, but because it just is witness. It's bearing witness to the fact that kids can understand so early, and they want us to help them find the words to name what they're feeling so they don't have to have the dysregulated behavior. Children have immature brains and immature nervous systems until they're 25, and our job is to teach and be bigger, kinder, wiser. And when we are, we mirror to them what they should do in the middle of an emotional emergency. And when we do that enough, help them walk that pathway to get through that big, scary feeling, then guess what? They begin to internalize, because children have an invisible voice recorder inside of them. Whatever we say to them, they repeat back to themselves. And so when we teach them how to manage these big feelings, how to feel safe in the world, guess what happens? They begin to develop these skills. So I actually applaud when I see a child with a dysregulated, challenging, we call it challenging behavior. It doesn't matter. We don't need to know the history to help a child. We just need to be careful observers of nervous systems that are in distress. And instead of abandoning them, ignoring them, or saying their behavior is just manipulation, trying to get our attention, we need to start to move away from that. And I don't mean spoiling kids. I mean helping kids navigate their big feelings so they can get better at regulating them and helping their own body to start to feel safe. Let's go to the last slide, where I'm actually going to tell a story about how much you are a brain architect. And by the way, the mental structures of the brain are open to change across the lifespan through this concept called neuroplasticity. It doesn't matter what age you are. I'm living proof. Somebody that experienced childhood trauma, I'm living proof of not being perfect, but of being able to rewire my brain and body in so many more healthy ways by intentionally walking pathways that help me feel safer, more regulated, building my own self-awareness. If I can do it, and I'm 56, You can do it, and so can we with our children who are developing 1 million new neural connections every second. I have one story just to close with you, a story of hope and a story of inspiration. And this is an example of a child who was in almost 10 foster care placements by the age of, I think, 7. And he was finally adopted and brought to an early childhood development program just like yours. And one of the most scary things for him was being dropped off at that center in the morning. And every time he was dropped off at the center, he would be so dysregulated because being dropped off meant you're not coming back, because I've been through so many foster homes. So his trauma response at drop off was to hit and kick and bite and throw. Thank goodness his teachers had been through trauma responsive training, increasing their empathy, increasing the voice. What is your behavior communicating you need? Now, they tried using the relationship to help him feel safe. That was the #1 strategy we've learned in all of our trauma trainings, is that we can build a relationship with a child to feel safe, but adults represented danger to him. And so in the beginning, he didn't feel safe with the adults. So then the adults tried to invite him to go to their safe zone in the classroom to help his body feel safe, but that reminded him of being sent away, and that would trigger him. So we had a meeting with the parents and we had a meeting with the teachers to think more deeply about what is his behavior communicating. And the moms came up with an idea. They said, why don't we give him the key to our home and tell him we can't get home without you have the key to our home. And my friends, sometimes it's a person that helps a child feel safe. Sometimes it's a place like a safe space. Sometimes it's an object like a teddy bear. And in this case, it was the key to the home. He held this key in his pocket and he looked at it 100,000 times, and it was the only image that reminded him they will be back, they will be back, they have to get me to get into the house. And I could cry telling this story, because what it means to me is that that was the point of entry to feeling safe. Later, he built a relationship with the teachers. Later, he was able to use the safe place. But there's always a point of entry where we can help a child's nervous system feel safe. And I just want to thank you for all the work you do, because to me, teachers are the heroes on this planet. They are the brain builders and the brain architects. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here with you tonight in your presence. I appreciate you all.
Julie, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just as a reminder, after our speakers have concluded, we're going to have question and answer period at the end of the speakers. In the meantime, if you have a burning question, please do put it in the chat. Julie is going to be reviewing and responding as we transition to the next speakers to the best she can. And we're going to, as we talked about earlier, we're going to delve into the details of the ROC toolkit. And we're going to utilize 2 team members who helped develop it. Elisa Burton, who is a program supervisor at the City of Oakland Head Start. And also she's an adjunct faculty at the early childhood at Advanced College, among many other things. Joining her is LaWanda Wesley, LaWanda is the Director of Government Relations at the Child Care Resource Center, or CCRC, and among many other things. She has also worked at OUSD, Oakland Unified School District, as the Director of Quality Enhancement and Professional Development of Early Learning. Both Elisa and LaWanda have been amazing integral parts in the development of the ROC Toolkit. I'm very pleased to hand it over to you, LaWanda and Elisa. Please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Winona. And I want to thank you for that great introduction. And I want to say, not only am I faculty with Advance, but I'm also adjunct faculty with Merritt College. And I'm so happy to see many of the workforce development apprentice students here tonight too, and taking this journey with us as well. So as I jump in and talk about some of the key aspects around this toolkit and provide the overview of the ROC toolkit, I can't help but reflect about how back in 2016, myself, as well as Winona, who's our mental health and disabilities coordinator, and Caroline and Priya, as well as Lawanda, I can't help but reflect on how we both were at a stage in our program's development or status in terms of really being at a crossroad with how do we give not only children a voice, but staff a voice to support a lot of the behaviors that we were all experiencing in our joint programs. City of Oakland and OUSD as two of the, biggest providers of childcare was really, really important as we came together to really think about what can we do to support all of this wonderful work that was put into this toolkit. So I just had to comment on that. So next slide before I jump into it. So what's the goal? What is the goal of our whole toolkit? We want to make sure that it's important to understand that the goal is to increase resilience. Our goal of this toolkit is to also increase healthy social emotional development of children in trauma sensitive and trauma informed healing environments. Key word being resilience, key word being healing environments, not only for children who have experienced trauma, but for all children. So when we think about how this toolkit is used to support children experiencing trauma, but it's also great for all children, because as Julie so wonderfully conveyed, a lot of this information can be conveyed not only for children with trauma, but all children. Also, when we think about giving children a voice and giving the staff a voice, I also want to highlight that one of the key aspects of this toolkit, and we'll get more into that too, Lawanda will cover that in depth, but one of the key aspects of this is around positivity. It's around resilience. It's around being proactive. So that's the goal. The goal is to increase resilience and make sure that our environments are structured to be healing environments as we look to support trauma sensitive and trauma informed children. And then another key aspect to this whole toolkit is that it's a collaborative structure. It's not just for our professionals. This toolkit is meant for ECE providers, whether it's teachers, family services staff, administrators. It's meant to really support the needs of all ECE providers, family child care providers, thinking about the collaborative structure for this toolkit. Coaches, we have a lot of coaches in programs, whether they're early learning coaches, supporting all of those great ECE practices that are happening. And as we think about some of the needs around children as far as trauma, this toolkit is here for us. Mental health consultants, they were also part of the input also. When I think of how we came around the table as we were looking at developing this toolkit, a lot of our mental health consultants have the opportunity to weigh in as well and give input. So the collaborative structure is really important piece. Content experts, not just around mental health, disability education. As we know in Head Start, where I come from, Head Start is very comprehensive. So I'm excited too to see the comprehensive nature of this whole toolkit, which leads to yoga and mindfulness coach. So thinking about how yoga and all of that physical activity is really key to how we think of self-care, how we think of being safe and feeling safe, not only for the children, but for ourselves when we think about yoga and having those mindfulness attitudes and thinking about how we are training our brain to be supportive and resilient. So next slide. So this next slide talks about the components of the toolkit. So I'm going to highlight some of the components of the ROC toolkit. And then when we get to Lawanda, Dr. Lawanda Wesley, she will go into depth into some of these. But just to let you know, some of the components of the ROC, and you will get to see it as well, and you have the link for it as well. But workshops, there are a lot of there's information about the workshops, so how we're developing content knowledge. One of the components of the ROC toolkit also has to do with, like I said, supporting the well-being of educators, thinking about yoga and mindfulness. I know OUSD had this amazing yoga coach. And I would say, and especially during the pandemic, I would chime in and be doing those yoga stretching activities. And I can't help but reflect on how I would walk away and think about how that helped me, especially during the pandemic, when we were online and in a virtual shelter in place status, but still trying to meet our own well-being. So thinking about how this toolkit supports the well-being of educators is also a key component of the ROC toolkit. And then the professional learning communities, which is a space that we offer for safety, for community, and professional growth. And those professional learning communities is one of the key components of ROC that I really appreciate, because I know us in Head Start, we're always so busy. We never have time to create a safe space and an opportunity for everyone to come together and just talk about what the children are going through. How are we responding? How are our environments providing a safe space? How are we making sure we're giving a voice for children? How are we taking all of this information in and processing it? Because it's hard work, but with that hard work comes a lot of support. So those professional learning communities are really important. And then coaching, which is a model that is very important too, where we're able to have a thought partnership with teachers, is the other component of ROC. Okay, next slide. And then this slide just highlights some of the tools that are part of the toolkit. And here you also see the link for the toolkit as well. And that's one of our Head Start teachers in that picture there. That's at our West Grand site. So I just want to highlight that as well. But like I said, Wanda will talk about the first bullet that you see here, which is trauma responsive classroom strategies. She's going to go into all of the items that make up, or some of the items that make up that particular tool that's part of the toolkit. When we think about attunement, relationship building, self-regulation, and environments, that's all part of those classroom strategies. And then there's a trigger checklist. And I really like this next one, which is the Knowing Children tool. So how we think about and focus on the child, whether it's culture, whether how we get to know the children. So that tool is really exciting too, and Lawanda will cover that. And then there's a tool called the Professional Learning Community Tools. And finally, the Community of Practice series. So just introducing what's to come, and Lawanda will elaborate a little more. But those are some of the tools that are part of the toolkit. Next slide. So now I'm going to turn it over to Lawanda. This next slide and these next few slides will go into, we will highlight some of those key points to give you a snapshot of what to expect in the toolkit as far as these tools. So I'll turn it over to Lawanda right now.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. I am so excited to be with all of you. I miss my Oakland family, but you're always in my heart, and I always find ways to come back to you. So with that said, thinking about tonight's session and our here celebrating the ROC Toolkit, many folks, when we started introducing this work and talking about what it means to be healing centered and trauma responsive, folks were asking, what are the tangible, concrete strategies? And I can do a shout out with my Oakland Unified School District folks, as well as my City of Oakland Head Start folks. And of course, all of you who make up the Oakland Starting Smart and Strong community, you pushed us to really think hard about that, what that looks like. And so we had to kind of buckle down. And I'm really fortunate that we were able to look at some of the work that Dr. Julie Nicholson and Julie Kurtz, who is here with us, our rock star of the evening, and Linda Perez, when they published their book. And what we found from that particular document around being trauma responsive are these 5 core classroom strategies. They're very practical. And as you look on the left-hand side around attunement strategies, one of the things we realize is that when we tune into a child, we as the adults, we serve sort of as a remote control to that child and that child back to us. There's, bigger concepts around that. that we went into, like mirror neurons, but really thinking about if we stay calm, then that child sort of dials into us, we dial into them, and then we start to co-regulate with one another. So we can actually serve as a child's calming mechanism by co-regulating with them. So, and then thinking about relationship building strategies, many times, this good old fashioned, all of us who know child development pedagogy is like trying to make sure you not pay attention to the behaviors that are less desirable, but really honing in on the behaviors that are positive, the ones that we want to see, and giving more attention to that. And then thinking about how do we give warm support? What does that look like? At nap time, is that a nice rub? Is it a soothing voice? Is it us kneeling down at eye contact and saying, I'm here with you, you're safe, everything is okay? To looking at autonomy, making sure that children have a sense of agency. And we learned during the work around thinking about resilient children is that when they don't have a sense of agency, that's when, and they don't have a sense of autonomy, that's when they're sort of in that fight, flight, freeze mode. But when they do have autonomy and they feel they can be creative, they can share and express their feelings. I love the video of Julie's grandson. It's just beautiful to be able to start to give him those agencies right away when he's in his calm state of brain. So teaching that, we teach so many things. We teach math, we teach literacy, but do we teach sensory and emotions to our children? So thinking about on the right-hand side, self-regulation strategies, thinking about, do we have sensory activities? Are there tactile children in your program who benefit from that, whether it's a squeezy ball or if it's running water, cool running water? All of these things can provide a sense of self-regulation. And I'm actually a child who was in foster care, in and out of foster care myself. So the example Julie shared is so true. We try to find ways when we've been impacted by trauma to self-soothe. And here are ways that we could give this to them. And one of the things I really want to lift up, also happened to be part of the Center for Optimal Brain Integration, COBE, with Julie and Elisa and Winona, is that we want to be sure to teach children sensory words. That I feel like I'm really mad. I feel like there's rocks in my stomach. Being able to have those expressions and those words. And then, of course, environmental changes in the program, just making sure that there are visual cues that children can rely on to think about predictability and transitions. So we'll go on to the next slide to look at some of the additional classroom strategies. And next slide, please. We will look at, which is one of my favorite, as we were learning about how to do this work together. And I think about Melissa Luke, who's with us. At the time, she was with New Teacher Center, and she was our coach, our teacher coach. And we had to really be intentional and think about, well, if we're going to work with adults in this space, what does it mean to be intentional with that time as we're designing these professional learning communities? What does that look like? And then also thinking about, in relationship to that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, what does it mean to get to know your children? So as we thought about that, we started to think about, I remember us having chart paper and sort of like designing the persona of those children and saying, what are their likes? What are their dislikes? And we wanted to personalize that. So you'll see on the right-hand side, the column that's says personal context. We wanted to know who they were. What did they like? What didn't they like? Who dropped them off? Who was caring for them? We wanted to know what were their favorite toys, the words that they used to communicate and express. So we did some of that mapping, and then we looked at their social emotional skills, and then we also looked at learning, whether you use the desired results to get some of that information or just being a keen observer in the classroom of that child. You became a student of that child to really learn about them and individualize for them. So you'll see all of this, from personal context to their cultural background and race, to social emotional, to building relationships, and then having a sense of where their executive functioning was happening and not happening, what times of the day, to their learning strengths and so on. So we'll go to the next slide. And our next slide, you'll see that this is where we started taking the information of the child. We started taking how we were supporting the adults directly. And you can see what was important for us to lay out a plan for the entire school year. So we have a set of objectives. I won't go into that in detail because you can read. But what was really important for us is that we were always regulating with one another and creating a connector. So you'll see, for example, in the October session, you will have a connector where we were storytelling and using listening protocols. Like, what is your story? What brought you to the preschool classroom? Why are you here? And many of us talked about our love for children or wishing someone was there for us in this way in these similar settings. And you'll also see a highlight of a practice. So we never left that session without diving deep into a specific practice. We also went at the speed of trust. But if you were to look through October all the way through May, other than the celebration, each one of the sessions was really focused again on how we connected with one another as a learning community, but then how we dialed into a specific strategy. So if you're ever thinking about how you can facilitate this back in your own learning community, using the ROC toolkit as a template, this is something that you can use and borrow and then modify and repurpose for your own. And then I will go to the next slide. Both Elisa and I will help co-facilitate this piece as we start to bring our section to a close. What was important for us here was just really making sure that our teachers, practitioners, caregivers had a place to reflect, increase their own awareness. We wanted to make sure they left with tools that made sense to them. So they created their own action plans. We probably overloaded them with resources. In every session, we used somatic practices, meaning we were dialing into their nervous system to help bring calm, because sometimes we showed up being fooled from the day with all sorts of scenarios of children who had big behaviors. We even thought about families who came to us with big behaviors, if that makes any sense. Sometimes our families were dysregulated. So these were some of our strengths and successes of our programs. And then I'll let Elisa facilitate the next two slides as we close out.
And then the other one, the second bullet around integrating mindfulness. Did I cut my mute is off. Integrating mindfulness in a somatic approach, which has to do with, again, the breathing, the yoga, taking time to really internalize what's going on and think about not only how the behaviors play out with children, how do they communicate their behaviors, but us, because we mirror what happens with children. So how can we be calm when children are in, say, a ramped up state? So looking at all of those approaches, and then as we think about self-care, again, the yoga approach, just one example. It might be nature. There are other ways to think about somatic approach. It might be being at one with nature. It might be taking your own walk. It might be music. It might be a candle. It might be all the things that you need to think about for yourself. And then the next one has to do with including teachers, administrators, coaches, mental health providers, family advocates, and others in those professional learning communities. And thinking about how that's a safe space to, as we keep repeating and emphasizing, to process. And as LaWanda just gave you a template for how to do that, that one is really important. I know when we did an evaluation on what stood out for our Head Start teachers, I recall that being the biggest positivity. One of the biggest positive things from this whole toolkit framework was the PLCs, and really having someone to help guide and facilitate that. And typically for us, it would have been our mental health provider. So now I'll turn it over to LaWanda for the next ones.
All right. So next slide. I think yes, thank you. So just for anyone who's having questions or they're interested in thinking about their own professional learning community and toolkit, we want you to make sure you have access to expressing your interest and then us sharing that with you. So that is it. That is our kind of peekaboo, if you will, into the toolkit. We wanted to make sure you got really practical strategies and ideas about what was in the toolkit, and it moves beyond the report into something that's very user friendly. And so I will transition back to Winona, our moderator.
Thank you so much, Lawanda, and thank you so much, Elisa. That was wonderful. I just was nodding the entire time, remembering all of the rock moments we had in our PLC. So our next speakers are actually going to speak exactly about that. So they're going to be speaking about what it's like to actually implement rock. So Melissa Luke is an early childhood education consultant, an amazing person, and one of the driving forces behind developing our rock toolkit. She's going to be joined by Rhonda Moore, who is an educator in OUSD, who participated in piloting the rock tools at our OUSD preschool. So please take it away, Melissa and Rhonda. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be in community with everyone tonight. Zoom is a beautiful thing. We can connect with so many different people. I am so honored to be here with you all and to talk about and share our work around rock. And I have been a person who feels so strongly about being in collaboration with Julie Kurtz named earlier heroes, with heroes around bringing this rock work to school sites. I have been in collaboration with several of our OUSD early childhood schools and really in conversation around how to think more about process, being more trauma responsive, and how to really think about resilience building and being more healing engaged within our classrooms and with our children and families. We have been able to bring some of the pieces to some of the OUSD schools, one being the one that I've been most closely working with is bringing professional learning communities, or PLCs, to some of the schools, and also some coaching work. And one of the schools that we're going to highlight today is that of Stonehurst Early Childhood Center. Woo woo! And we're going to be joined by Rhonda Moore, who's an educator, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her experience. Rhonda, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy May Day. Thank you all for having me and allowing me to share my experience.
So we've been working at Stonehurst in collaboration for about 3 years now. And we've been bringing the PLC about once a month, where the entire staff comes together after school without children, and in really hoping to build a brave and safe space to process together and work together and hone in on some of these resilience building strategies. So Ms. Rhonda, can you share with us one impact from participating in the ROC PLCs?
Yes. So one of the main things that I really care for about the Rock PLC was it gave us as teachers, the ladies at my site, it gave us time to come together, sit down and actually talk out what we're going through in each classroom. Yes, we see each other in passing, but sometimes that's so short you can't get, this gave us time to sit down, collaborate, bounce ideas off of one another. What's working in your class, and what's working in your class. Maybe I can use that. So that was one of the best parts about this whole collaboration.
Thank you. It's also been super fun to be together and build those relationships with one another.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pieces in terms of our agenda in the ROC PLCs is really attuning and honing in on a focus child. And that was an opportunity where each teaching team stood together and chose one child to hone in on. Oh, my own children want to join this meeting. It's very engaging to them. But we're thinking about each teaching team brought to us to the space a focus child, a child where we can talk more about process together and really build with one another some strategies around this focus child. So can you talk about, Ms. Rhonda, about how honing in on a focus child impacted your practice, your teaching practice?
Yeah, so I think we did this exercise last year, and I had a focus child that um, she was really my focus every day. Every day, I could help but focus on this child. And I don't know if I think I've shared this in some of the other meetings with some of the ladies, but this child in particular, when she came into the school, she came in with a twin brother, and um, for some reasons, there was something we didn't know in the beginning what it was, but something was triggering her to lash out on her brother. And it became a constant thing. And on the outside looking in, and this looked like it was out of the blue. He's just playing by himself. And next, she's fighting, she's hurting him. And I'm like, what is going on? So, you try to talk to parents, what's going on? It got really, really bad. Like he would come to school with bruises. And we're like, so this happens all the time. It seemed like it was a normal part of their life. And so, I tried to do the whole, what's going on? How you feel. Their children, and they didn't know how to use their words, right? She didn't know how to explain what was going on with her. And I remember bringing it up in one of the rock meetings and was like, I'm trying to find out what's going on. She was like, they were like, well, sometimes there will be no words. Sometimes we can't ask them because they don't even know. So I started switching the way I approach her. In the beginning, she was just like, no, I don't want to do it. I think she felt like she kept saying, I can't do it. So she would get upset when I asked her to do things. But every little thing she did, I would praise her for it. And so she's kind of like, oh, this is kind of uplifting, And then I just started piling it on for the simplest things, just so and then sometimes I would see she was trying to get upset and she would try to veer toward the brother. So I would, hey, did you do that today? Oh my goodness, that is so, switch it up or kind of redirect her. Like, come on, let's go over here and play, because I can see she was getting worked up. But, maybe he would get a lot of attention at home. I don't know. We never got to the bottom of that. But she, something was making her lash out at him. So, the more I started praising her for things she did good, she started feeling good about herself. And I was like, okay, maybe this is what, this is the kind of stuff she needed. She needed to hear that you're good, you're great, you're awesome. Oh my gosh, you did that all by yourself. So I would give her, little stickers or whatever. She'd take her paper and she'd be so happy about it. So I was like, okay, this was kind of, helping to take, if that was, I don't know if that was the end all for her to, stop lashing out at brother. But in the meantime, it did help, kind of calm things down with her in the classroom, because they end up getting quite a few resources too at the school. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. One of the things that I loved the most about the facilitating the PLCs and being a part of it was really having a space to process all of this, to be in community with one another, and being able to have a time where we can really make space to talk about the children that are in front of us. What was also nice at Stonehurst and also at the other school sites that we brought Rock to was really thinking about how important it is for us to make space for us adults as learners, and also to make space for us in our own self-care, because this is not easy work. And the heroes who are doing it every single day need spaces and time to take care of themselves as well. Thank you so much, Ms. Rhonda, for sharing just a little snippet of your experience. And we're going to turn it back to the moderators. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you so much, Miss Rhonda. That was really very helpful. That was some wonderful, very specific, honest insights into what rock actually looks like in a classroom. We have a few minutes now, as promised, to take some questions for our speakers. So you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom. It might be listed under your reactions. And you can put your question in the chat. We have time for maybe about 2 questions, and I'm going to ask Paige for your help in looking for hands.
Okay, I'm looking.
Thanks. We don't. We can also look to the chat if nobody has any questions at this time.
There was one question around translation of the toolkit, and I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that Oakland Strong, Smart and Strong is working on that. So it'll be translated into Spanish soon.
Hi, I have a question. This is Giselle. It wasn't clear to me if rocks, the professional community, is something that you are offering to host, or if you're looking for groups of teachers or schools that are willing to host their own community based on your sample.
Priya, I think you can
Yeah,
answer.
I can jump in. Yes, I can jump in. That's a great question. I think we are open to both. We want to make this resource available to folks in the community. And so that's what, and folks can modify it to whatever suits, your group. We put an interest form in the chat because we wanted to see if it would be of use and of help to folks for us to coordinate this more widely in the community. To date, it's only been with Oakland Unified School District and City of Oakland Head Start, but we are looking to expand that if there's interest.
So if one was interested in running one at their own site, would you still click on this form or you would contact someone else?
Oh, that is a great question. You can fill out the form, and you can also we will note that today. You can put it in the chat and we will note that and reach out to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
There is another question in the chat. Using your model, can you use it with older school age kids or only early childhood? I don't know who wants to jump in.
I'll just start to share a little bit, but I know it'd be great to hear from, I don't know if Rhonda can share a little bit more, but yes, the same skills are transferable to older students. In fact, some of our educators worked in both the preschool classroom and in the school age. So anywhere where you're tuning to a child, attunement is a strategy you can even use with adults. So if you go back to thinking about Julie talking about what it means to be humane and to grow a human, you can do this with all folks, all ages. Of course, you modify it based on the age. With younger children, you're using more play-like game images. With older kids in school age programs, you're having conversations with them that again is developmentally appropriate, but letting a child know that you're there, you see them, you hear them, letting the child know here are some ways that you can regulate your body, from breathing techniques to some of the things that Lisa talked about. The somatic skills are things you can easily teach and help facilitate with an older school age child. I don't know if that's helpful and if anyone wants to chime in.
I think that's super helpful. There's actually one more question that was in the chat that got a couple of thumbs up. It's probably for Julie. but it was, could you give some examples of how to do emotional emergency drills at a care center or at home?
Yes, that's such a good question. First of all, I just want to thank Miss Rhonda, who inspired my heart and soul with the work that she's doing. The fact that you look past that shark fin to, wanting to give that child love and connection and finding a way to help them feel safe just brought tears to my eyes. So thank you. And I want to say emotional emergency drills. It sounds more complicated than it is, but it starts always with teaching kids feelings. And oh my God, all of a sudden I got so big on the screen, I'm scared myself. Okay, I'll just go with it. Teaching kids about feelings is the way that we start. Then step number 2 is beginning to teach them about the size of their feelings inside of them. Are they small like a mouse? Are they medium like a lion? Are they large or small like a mouse, medium like a cat, or large like a lion? And I think there are lots of books that we can get in our classroom that can teach kids about emotional literacy. And every time we read a book to a child, we can ask the kids, what are the characters feeling? And we can have feeling check-in charts in our classroom with thermometers that help them identify the size of their feelings. The more we practice when kids are calm, the third thing that we want to teach kids intentionally is pathways and strategies to help their body feel safe. Sometimes that's a teacher, a person. Sometimes it's a place like a safe zone in the classroom. Sometimes it's an object like my teddy bear or the key of the home of that story that I told. It could very well be a fidget toy in the classroom, or painting, or climbing up a slide, and activities that children can use to regulate their nervous system. Did you know that that Black boys are expelled at a 500% higher rate than any other child? And there's an article about Black boys in kindergarten and Black boys being kinesthetic learners and big body movement learners. And we need more movement in our classroom for all kids to be able to expel energy out. And so all of these things that we learned in the ROC trainings, in the PLCs, are the things we keep putting in our emergency toolkit to be able to not just teach kids what to do instead, but also to be able to help them feel safe in their nervous system with us. You may be the only person and the only place that a child has on the planet that their nervous system feels safe with. And Miss Rhonda's an example of that. So thank you for that question.
Julie, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined in with some great questions. And I know we could continue on these questions, so thank you so much. But we're going to have a chance for folks to have more conversations in the breakout rooms. So we're going to go into our breakout rooms. You will have a facilitator who will lead you through some questions, and we're going to meet back here to close out the meeting at about 7:55. Diana is going to launch the breakout rooms, and I think you just accept to join. Please, everyone, enjoy yourselves in your conversation in your breakout rooms. Thank you again. And if anyone needs tech support, you can tap Ask Help in the top left corner and confirm that you would like assistance by tapping Ask for Help. That's in the breakout room. I mean, that's in the chat. I think we're still waiting for everyone to come back? Okay. Correction myself. And I'm just watching the little participant tick. So I think we got, or Diana, can you let me know when it seems like everyone's back?
I think you've got critical mass.
We got critical mass. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Again, once again, if your interpretation is turned off, you need to reselect your either English, Spanish, or Chinese again. again, we all want to thank everyone for your participation, the energizing discussion before we went to breakout rooms. I really hope that you had some great discussions in your breakout rooms. I know I learned a lot tonight. I really hope everyone else here did. We really, really appreciate you spending this Wednesday evening with us. We'll be sending out an email with an evaluation form. If you can please, take a little bit of time to fill it out. Sorry, something strange happened with my language. So, we want to hear your feedback. It really helps us with our future events. The email will also include your professional development certificate and the resources shared by the speakers. Before we conclude, I want to be sure to thank the Rainin Foundation, the Tandem Partners for Early Learning, and the Packard Foundation for supporting the symposium. I want to thank all of our wonderful partners who helped plan this event, the Oakland Starting Smart and Strong staff, our interpreters, and our speakers, and our small group facilitators. And we want to remind you again about our event on Saturday that you can register for. We hope that we see as many of you who are able to join us on Saturday. And again, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. This was awesome. We should do it again next year.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
Thank you.
You all have a good night.
Good night. Good night. Enjoy your evening.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
You too.